Hi everyone, this is Sharon Gourlay from digitalnomadwannabe.com, and today I've got Amber with me from Mediavine. She's a co-founder, and I know a lot of you are like you already use Mediavine, or you're super keen to. So she's going to tell us all about it. So Amber, if you just want to start by introducing yourself and what's your background and how you got started with Mediavine, that would be great.
Sure. So it's kind of a convoluted story. I am a food blogger, have been since 2008. And I was also a full-time fraud analyst for brands you've probably heard of, Travelocity and lastminute.com. And food blogging was just kind of a side passion. And then right around fall of 2012, I went to a food blogging conference and I met this guy who kind of looks like Bradley Cooper. He walked up to me after I'd been my usual sort of outspoken self during a panel where someone just sort of was talking about how nobody's paying their mortgage with their blog. And you just felt the room deflate, right? Because it was a room of like 60 bloggers that were there to learn how to better their blog so that they could eventually pay their mortgage with their blog. And, I don't really love it when people give misinformation like that sort of deflates people. That's one of those things that just really gets me.
Yeah.
I worked at Disney in college, and so for me, like the idea of if you can dream it, you can do it is a big thing. We talk about that a lot in my household with my kids. And so, speaking of, and so I met this guy, and he's like, I want to start a food site. You sound like you know what you're talking about. Would you maybe come and help me? And at the time, I was actually, working in the industry and making quite a good deal of money. I was making six figures, and he was like, oh, well, I can't pay you like that, but maybe we can hire you on a consultancy basis to help us on the side. And I was like, yeah, sure. So we started Food Fanatic together, and the idea behind Food Fanatic was a contributor-driven site with food bloggers that we already knew and loved. And building out Food Fanatic, we kind of created this community and this family that we didn't necessarily intend to create, but it was Eric and Matt and Steve which are my other three co-founders, had never really been exposed to the lifestyle blogger. And they didn't really, they just came at blogging from a completely different perspective. They started Mediavine back in 2004 as an SEO shop. So for them, creating content was never really about passion. It was about creating stuff for SEO and making sure that what you were writing about was going to garner lots of hits, not necessarily be something where most lifestyle bloggers start blogging about, something passionate that they're passionate about, family or parenting or crafting or food. And so for them, it was a complete eye opener. And right around, I want to say it was 2014, Eric says to me, our advertising company is not really doing well for us. And I think I can build something. As the programmer among us, he's like, I think I can build something to do better. Well, but at that point in time, Food Fanatic was our smallest site, which it still is, and The Hollywood Gossip was our biggest site. And between those, Food Fanatic's at about 500,000 page views a month. The Hollywood Gossip is at about 30 million. So whatever he built had to scale between those quite easily in order to not have him programming all day long. And so the technology that he built could flex between those sites without him having to do any extra work. And it actually kind of became the method to our madness, and the reason that we're able to work with a site of any size and not have any sort of heavy lifting as far as technology is concerned, as far as like making sure that bids are going to work properly and all of those things. Like, we took sort of the size equation out of it. And so after we launched this stuff for ourselves, which was always the motivation, our fanatics said to us, well, can you help me too? And excuse me, at that point, it was kind of like, one second. Sorry. As I was telling Sharon before, I've had bronchitis. And at that point, once we were able to get approval to represent one site, we could represent as many sites as we wanted. So we started with 6 of our food fanatics, and we are now at more than 3,500 sites across Mediavine. And
that's quite great.
And we started with them in June of 2015. So in a little, basically 3 years. We're at 3 years now.
Wow. Sorry, something went wrong a bit there with the sound, but hopefully it's okay now. So 3 years, yeah, because I only heard about you guys for the first time last year. So it's been about 3 years since you've been taking on anybody?
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what exactly is Mediavine?
So we started out as bloggers, right, as I just talked about. And that's kind of where we still are in our mindset. Other people would call us potentially an ad network. We don't like that word. We don't like the word network. It has a lot of negative connotation in both the blogging sphere and in the advertising sphere, believe it or not. So right now you could qualify us as, I guess, an ad management company. But for us, this is about a lot more than advertising. So we're kind of, our mission statement is helping build sustainable businesses for content creators. So for us, it's a much bigger picture. So like we're about to release our first plugin that's meant to help bloggers. It's going to be a recipe card plugin that eventually will move into being a DIY and craft plugin. It's kind of the first of its kind. We're working on a social sharing plugin, and all of these aren't meant to like reinvent the wheel because we know there are lots of them out there. What we're doing is we're trying to focus on plugins that are built for site speed and SEO, as well as the functionality that is required, rather than being clunky and bringing down your database, which is what we see.
That's like good things. For sure, there's regular complaints, especially I think like social warfare has really screwed some people recently, and plugins in that area in general not really work very well.
The cool thing for us is that we've solved the how to make money problem. So now we can just put our resources towards building really cool stuff that bloggers want and not have to worry about how we're going to pay for it. So like the recipe plugin, it's called Mediavine Create, and it's going to be across DIY, craft, food. Eventually we're probably going to build something similar for travel and all of this, is going to be free. So we're not like, there's not going to be any sort of annual fee built into that.
Oh, that's awesome. Will they be built to work with advertising as well? Yeah.
But you can get advertising, but you don't have to be with Mediavine. Like we specifically built it so that if you are with another company, they can still target the card the way that we would.
Okay, cool. So why should bloggers work with Mediavine?
I really think it comes down to what your long-term goals are, right? So a lot of bloggers that we work with really just, they want to be able to work from home. They want to be able to support their families. They want to be able to do that long-term. And like I said about that mission statement, the thing is, we're here for the long haul. Like we don't do things in a quick roughshod manner to sort of pull as much money from your audience as possible in a short amount of time. That's just not how we've ever done it. For us, it's more about building stuff. Sorry, guys. Sorry. For us, it's more about bronchitis, man.
That sounds horrible. Thank you so much for still coming online.
Oh, goodness. This is probably the most I've spoken in a couple of days, which is why it's like, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, where did that cough come from? So for us, it's more about like building these things and building things that your audience is okay with, that your audience tolerates and actually even enjoys. So like, for example, it took us a little bit longer to bring video monetization to every session than some of our competitors. And the reason for that is we refused to sort of launch video in a way that was slowing down the page too much, or that was putting video where it wasn't going to be seen and provided like a really terrible user experience. To us,
Yeah.
that is not worth it at all. User experience is more important than pretty much anything that we do. And so, like, for example, on mobile, we finally solved the problem on mobile by creating this this unit that can be seen at all times, but it plays muted. And when we first launched it across Mediavine, we actually, one of our biggest UK publishers, Pinch of Nom, she had emails from her readers saying how much they loved it, and they thought it was a new like blog feature, not advertising.
Yeah,
which to us was like huge,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. That's really good
But that
feedback.
also gets like $18 CPMs on mobile, which
Yeah.
is unheard of. So by sort of solving the user experience problem and providing an experience that readers want, we actually are also providing more value to the advertisers. And I think taking that approach means that long term, there's not going to be another competitor out there that will look at this in that way and provide value the way that we will. And that's why I would want somebody to work with us over somebody else.
Okay, is there any blogs you wouldn't recommend working with Mediavine? Like, is there a niche that doesn't really work or anything like that?
Niche-wise, there's not really an issue for the most part. Really what it comes down to when somebody maybe gets declined from us or something like that, we look for a blog layout that is going to be easy to navigate, that readers themselves would find appealing. And then the other thing that we're looking for is the type of traffic that our advertisers want to buy. So if, for example, you have a large portion of traffic that comes from an area of the world where they refuse to spend money on advertising, the way that our solution works is we will actually collapse the ad so that it doesn't exist if somebody doesn't meet our auction floor price. So say, for example, you have 50% traffic from India. 98% of the time, Indian advertisers are not going to meet our floor price because it starts at 50 cents. So that would mean 50% of your traffic goes unmonetized.
Yeah.
That can make it a very unacceptable experience to the site owner. And so for us, like, you know, and our advertisers will even look at that and say, no, we can't buy that audience, so we don't even want to work with that site. So for us, like, if you look at your traffic breakdown and you have a lot of traffic from places where you know they won't spend money on advertising, that would be a site that I would say don't work with us.
Yeah.
But then you're probably going to want to work with somebody in that local area that has a connection to that audience instead.
So when you work that out, because I know you've got a 25,000 session minimum to join out, do you just like, if you had 50,000 sessions and 25,000 was from the US and 25,000 from India, could you join if you wanted to?
You could, but it also still depends on if the advertising partners approve, right? Yeah. So it's just us looking at this. We actually use third-party tools with our advertising partners, and we submit every domain to them to say, will you approve this domain to spend on it? You know, there are other things that they look at too. Like if your blog is less than a year old, more than likely half of our partners are not going to approve you because your domain is not old enough to be trusted in the advertising space. And that has nothing to do with us. That is literally their requirement, right? So, so we would probably come back to you and say, you know, our advertisers have said no. And they don't give us, a lot of times they don't give us a reason. We can guess, but a lot of times they don't give us a reason as to why they've said no. They just say no.
Okay. So the reasons why you might not get accepted, so you've got traffic from other countries.
Age.
I know the layout's important. The age of the site. Is there anything else?
Um, whether or not you've ever purchased traffic and or been banned from Google AdSense.
Okay.
Those are pretty big deals, right? So Mediavine's kind of an outlier in this, in that we will not allow anyone into the network if you have purchased traffic for your site, like non-human traffic is what we refer to it as. Everybody gets those emails, right, where somebody says, I can increase your presence, I can increase your traffic, and all of a sudden all you see, you go ahead, you pay them some money, and all of a sudden you see a ton of hits from the Czech Republic to your homepage. And you're like, yay, my traffic went up. But what was actually happening was a bot farm in the Czech Republic was hitting your homepage. Those aren't actually real sessions. And that is something that the advertising business is trying very hard to crack down on. So they will not bid on us. Like, basically, we've seen that happen, right? Where someone who just didn't even understand that buying traffic was a thing gets sort of sucked in by this promise. And we see their performance go like this.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is it's a bunch of these non-human clicks. And so the advertisers pull back real quick and are like, no, this isn't real traffic. We don't want to bid on this domain anymore. And in fact, that's one of the top things that will get you banned from Google, both AdSense and AdExchange. So we're a Google certified publishing partner. So we are actually bound by our contract with them that if we have a domain in the network that does purchase traffic, we have to shut them off and stop working with them per our contract with Google. Yeah.
So is that it? Any other reasons where there might be an issue?
I can't think. I mean, really, one thing I would want to make sure people understand is the reason that the 25,000 session requirement is there is because for us, it's about not alienating your audience as you're building it, right? So like with Food Fanatic, we didn't put ads on that site for 2 years before we started creating our own solution. And it wasn't because we were creating our own solution. It was because we were trying to build the loyal audience. And that's actually part of the reason that we agreed with our partners that we would have that threshold, right? So that they could have, like, basically they want to make sure that these domains are registering in their tools, which below that traffic threshold, you kind of won't. But the other thing is that advertising ads suck. We say this all the time. We're an ad company, but we will tell you all day long, ads suck. They are slow 98% of the time. They will alienate some portion of your audience, whether it's 2 people or 10, right? And so for us, the loss of the user experience that ads provide have to be worth it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
25,000 sessions, they're not worth it.
Okay. So how can bloggers get started with Mediavine? They've heard all this and they're like, yeah, sign me up. What do they need to do?
So it's actually pretty simple. You fill out the application on our website. You'll automatically get an email back asking you for a special template that we have set up that gives us a snapshot of your analytics. So I would say to everyone, if you don't have Google Analytics set up yet, go and set it up right now, even if you're miles off from this, because Google Analytics is sort of the industry standard. And that's why we focus on that. We can't accept stats from like Jetpack or any of these other tools. It has to be Google Analytics. And so we'll ask you for that template, and then we review it. We send it to our ad partners for them to review. It takes about 2 weeks from the time that you fill out the application to when all of our partners get back to us. But once they've come back to us, we will let you know, yes, we're ready to roll, or unfortunately, they've said no. And at that point, if you don't have any ads in place, we can pretty much get you on the launch calendar within a few days, and it takes about 15 minutes to launch.
Awesome. So often in like 2 weeks, it might take to get started.
Right.
You mentioned briefly before layouts, and I know myself that when I applied, I had to get my well, you guys did it for me, but set my sidebar to a fixed width. So what sort of layout do you need?
There's a misnomer out there that we require a sidebar. We don't. But a sidebar does help. It provides additional places for advertising. So, but what you're talking about is ad policy requires that any ads that are in your sidebar not be cut off in any way. And those are typically 300 pixels wide. So your sidebar has to remain a static 300 pixels wide unless the screen gets so small that it sort of drops the sidebar down below, like in a mobile situation, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're looking for with that. But we actually have an entire, since you've been with us, we've had a lot of changes. So we actually have an entire publisher engineer team now that will do those fixes as you're in the launch process. So you don't really...
did it when I was in it too. It was quite straightforward.
Yeah.
No complaints. Someone previously too just asked about what are the best kinds of layouts. So
right. I mean,
what would you recommend if you wanted to maximize Mediavine?
I mean, it's pretty simple. The layout, most blogs have, a standard layout, right? The things to stay away from would be like a homepage that has infinite scroll and like your full blog post there, right? Because it means nobody ever has to go into the individual post to read the article. And it's impossible for ads to target an infinite scroll of content. Like we can basically target the first post, but not the rest of them. So you would monetize like that first article, and then, the 25 other that people scroll through, we can't monetize those. So I would say stay away from infinite scroll. I would say a sidebar is helpful. Really more important than anything is a nice fast theme. So even if you're looking at like Genesis and you're looking at different like Shaybox or whoever you might be looking at for your child theme, make sure that your page speed is looking good, or work with someone that can help you with that. Because that does affect your SEO and it does affect your ads, because the faster your site loads. With us, our ads are asynchronous, meaning they won't stop other things from loading while they do their thing. But it also means that if something else on your site is super slow, like you have giant pictures or something that you've never optimized, it will stop our ads from loading. So site speed is exceptionally important for whoever you advertise with.
And just in general, really. So it's good practice. So how does payment work with Mediavine? So when do you get paid? How do you get paid? How does all that work?
So we are now net 65, meaning that you wait about 65 days for your first payment. And then after that, it's the same day every month. We've actually never paid late, and we've actually almost always pay early these days. So right now it's officially net 65, but we typically pay on the first of the month, which would be more like net 60. But the reason we do that is that we're waiting for the money from the advertisers to come in before we pay you. We don't ever use our money to pay bloggers, and we don't ever use blogger money to pay things operationally, right? Because that's how companies like Mode got in trouble. And so we keep a very clean, very tight ship. Right now we pay via PayPal, mass payments, which means any of the transfer fees that would come with that come out of our account, not yours. And then you can direct deposit into your account from there. That was the quickest we found, especially with international bloggers. However, we have heard people say that the transaction fees from PayPal are pretty significant. And so we're looking into a better international solution.
Cool. Yeah, I've heard some people talking about wanting another way. As someone who's Australian, I quite enjoy PayPal payments because at least it's fast. But I know that some people have issues with that.
Yeah.
So how does Mediavine calculate how much you get paid?
Well, this is a nice thing, right? One second. We're very straightforward with that. So it's a flat revenue share of 75% across the board. Any ad server fees, discrepancies, which if you don't know what those are, basically what happens is the ad server will say that you served 110 ad impressions, but then the advertiser says, no, I only served 100. Those 10 impressions, they won't pay for, right? So in typical advertising, like I was with Blog Her years ago, things like that, that basically at the end of the month, your income sort of got reconciled and it would drop, right? So when we started Mediavine, we decided that those discrepancies would just come out of our side. And it actually helps us keep the advertisers honest, because if they start creeping into above about 5% discrepancies, we actually threaten to shut them off until they fix it. So it actually helps keep the entire situation more honest. So it's a flat rev share of 75% to you, 25% to us. But then we have some ad impression based goals that if you have more traffic, it's easier to hit, but you can also hit them at lower thresholds of traffic, so long as you're extremely well optimized. So at 5 million ad impressions in a month, which people easily in the 100K range a month can hit, right? Because not every session can get up to like 15 ad impressions. So at 5 million ad impressions, it's 80% rev share to you. And then at 15 million ad impressions, it's 85% to you. But then we also have the loyalty bonus on that, on top of that, because I don't know if you know, but we don't have a referral program. We decided early on that we wanted reviews of ourselves out in the world to not be tied to a revenue stream. And so what we do instead is we have a loyalty bonus for as long as you're with us. You get an additional percentage every year up to 5%. So someone who's been with us for 5 years would get an additional 5%. So you have the potential to make a 90% rev share with us.
How does that compare to other companies? What's normal?
Probably our main competitor is at that 75% publicly. I don't know what they do like individually. Everybody kind of gets the same treatment at Mediavine. There's no like backdoor deals. There's nobody getting a minimum guarantee. So that happens a lot at other companies. Like it doesn't matter if it's another ad management company or some, big company like Ezoic, right? Depending on the site, they can arrange their own deals. Whereas with us, it's kind of everybody has the same deal. So I think that it's anywhere between 70 and 75. But for us, we realized like we're making enough money, so we just give it back, because at some point, the cost to launch a site sort of stops. Like we stop having the cost of what it took to onboard, right? And so that's why we started figuring out a better rev share system to give that money back.
So to switch to a different topic, I know from when I was using Mediavine, I guess the biggest thing that I would look at was how you had different frequency levels for ads. For your site, like you could be, I was very low, but there was like low and medium and higher ones, I'm sure. So how does that work? What are like the differences in like what you see and what you're likely to earn?
So when you were with us, we used a paragraph logic that sort of would look at your content and depending on your settings would space them out based on the number of paragraphs that were in the particular article. But since then, we're a member of the Coalition for Better Ads, which is this big entity that is working to make sure that advertising is sustainable, that people stop installing ad blockers, basically. And it has big names like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and they paid for this giant, millions of dollars study that said that the conclusion was readers didn't care how many ads you had, so long as you sort of maintained a 70% content to 30% advertising density.
That's quite a lot of ads.
Yeah. So what we did is we built new logic that figures out the size of your content area. So imagine it as like a research paper that you've printed out, right? However many pages, your content for that particular post is. Our logic figures that out, and then we'll only allow no more than 30%, but you can actually set it to lower density, which is a little bit different than what you used to be able to see in your dashboard when you were with us. So you can change the density, and that setting is for both. You can set it differently for desktop and mobile, because most of your audience is mobile, and mobile audiences tend to be more forgiving of in-content ads. So you could sort of leave that at a 30% density, but if desktop makes you crazy, you could set that at like 25%. And then the other thing that we offer is now you can actually cap it. So say, for example, you're a travel blogger that has a 5,000 word post with 40 photos, and you don't want that post getting more than 15 in content ads. You can set a cap, and our logic will space them out accordingly. So
cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have quite a lot of customization about how you can go about everything.
Yeah.
I know I was able to like turn it off for certain posts or change exactly what would be on certain posts, which is what I often recommend to people who have a lot of affiliates, because I found that it would affect my affiliate earnings. So I have to, be a little bit careful on those posts.
Right. I mean, it's funny. We've done a few different tests on that, and I know that because we run into this with financial bloggers a lot too. They'll turn off their ads on like almost everything, which makes their
earning that much.
It makes their RPM falsely low, because RPM is just a math calculation, right? So if half of your page views aren't being monetized because you've turned ads off on them, it can make your RPM look tiny when it's actually not. But we found that display advertising tends to not affect affiliate income, because if they're coming to the site and reading about like the product that you're writing about, they're going to click on the product you're writing about. They're not going to click on the display ad.
What if the display ad shows the product? Like, that's what my fear. And I definitely saw a big decrease on some of my posts with having ads.
I mean, there's definitely outliers to disprove everything that we've done with our testing. So it doesn't surprise me. Like, I think it really also depends on the product. So I know that like we have one blogger that blogs all blender recipes, and she wanted us to turn off every blender ad, which is really difficult to do.
I didn't see that level of customization.
Right. They don't come through as like Vitamix. They don't come through that way. They come through as like X2479, and there's no category for blender. So, we do our best. We absolutely do our best. But, I feel like based on what I've seen from other companies, we do our best to sort of walk that line of giving you as much customization as possible without you like making this not worth your while, if that makes sense.
No, I thought I was happy with the customization. I thought it was quick and easy, and
and you should see now there's a bunch more.
And I especially like how you could differentiate with mobile and desktop, because I figure on mobile people aren't really like using my affiliate links, for example, as much. So I would have different ad levels. So what can bloggers do to increase their earnings other than like making them more frequent, like we just talked about?
Yeah, so I mean, really it just comes down to engaging content, right? So keeping the reader on the page and interacting with your site. It helps with viewability of your ads, which is a lot of people think that you have to get your ads clicked on in order to get paid, and that's not the case, especially with Mediavine. We have programmatic advertising that buys based on viewability, which is the 50% of the actual advertisement, like the little square, 50% of that in the viewable screen for at least 1 second. So
that's pretty good.
That's there. The longer that's in the viewable screen, the more money you can get paid, because the more you're worth to the advertiser, right? This is the first time in the history of the world of advertising, which has been around since Roman times, that advertisers can know whether or not their ads have been seen, which is a big deal, right? And so if you're providing them with value, they provide you with more money. Like at the end of the day, that's literally what it comes down to. Funny enough.
The world.
The nice thing is that what we found is that by having engaging content that provides value to your reader, you're at the same time providing value to the advertiser, which is wonderful, right? That they go hand in hand. And so like when you're looking at your website, the biggest suggestion I would make these days is to look at your website, look at your most popular post on your phone.
Yeah.
Is it easily navigable? Do you have giant walls of text, which is not easily readable on a mobile phone? Or do you have small digestible chunks of information? So I'm not saying like only write like lists. Don't do that. What I'm saying is break up your giant paragraphs into 1 to 2 sentence chunks, right? So you're saying the same thing. You're just hitting return more often. Actually, both Microsoft and Google did studies about this and found that the smaller chunks of information like that were more scannable, which is what people do on mobile phones. They don't necessarily read to comprehend, they scan. And so if you can provide them with information in scannable chunks, they actually will stay longer and interact more. And that's actually also better for your advertising.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what about things like writing about certain niches or whatever? Like, do you notice a big difference between different niches and how much can be earned?
It's not really about the content so much as it is about the audience.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So with programmatic advertising, they're looking for specific audience demographics. So definitely lifestyle would make more money than, say, gaming, okay? Because gamers tend to be Redditors who have ad block installed and all of these things. Lifestyle is, moms and dads in that, 25 to 40 range where they're spending lots of money on things like diapers and cars and that sort of stuff, right? So they're worth more money to an advertiser because they're going to pay attention a little bit more to things like that. But what you're actually writing about, so long as you're sort of hitting that magic demographic, you don't have to worry too much about niching down.
Okay, so one final question, and then I have a couple of questions. And if anyone listening has a question, here's your chance. How does Mediavine help you be GDPR compliant? Like, is that all covered? Because I know that I've seen someone say, because I have ad blocker on, so I don't see it. There's like this big pop-up now that comes up.
So GDPR actually derailed our developer team for like 3 months. Because if anything's going to break your compliance, it's going to be your ads, right?
Yeah.
So we're really lucky in the way that we run our advertising. Again, it just comes back to Eric being kind of a genius in what he built all that long time ago, which he was really just being lazy and didn't want to program all day long. But because we run out of a single line of JavaScript, we're able at the time of entry to detect where the user is, whereas plugins tend to not be able to do that, right? GDPR's rules is that you have to be able to give them the opt-in, opt-out before they ever see a single advertisement. So for us, like a plugin was never an option because it doesn't give them the opt-in, opt-out early enough. And so we do it out of our script wrapper, which means we only target European demographics. And we have this pop-up that is completely GDPR compliant and says, do you want to support this website? Here's how you can support it. If you don't, this is how you opt out, and you have to click yes. And what's really, really interesting, right? We were terrified. We thought all of our European blogs, this is the end of their money. And so we started testing it, and we started testing it with Pinch of Nom because I want to say 90% of her traffic is UK. And she was terrified, right? Because, I mean, she's got an entire staff now. So this was going to be like a make or break moment. Within the first week of testing, she had 95% opt-in, and her income actually went up because advertisers were paying more, because the user, like, there was now confirmation that the user had opted into this kind of advertising.
Yep.
So it actually became this wonderful thing, which was just, I mean, we were all like, wait, what? This is awesome.
Well, that's really good that that's happened that way.
We were not expecting. So we had everyone across the network update their privacy policies. We've provided verbiage. If you don't, our lawyer wrote something, and she's given Mediavine members like a lifetime discount of any, and it's #legal. She's kind enough, whenever I do one of these, I can give it out. If you need a privacy policy, #legal. Sorry. The lawyers are from #legal, but their website is Business Ease. So it's the word business and then easy, ESE on the end.com. They have a privacy policy for sale there. If you use coupon code Mediavine, you get 15% off of it. But it's completely GDPR compliant. It covers affiliate stuff. It covers advertising. It covers influencer network work, like sponsored post stuff. And so we're still continuing to work on this. So our plugin covers your advertising completely. And we've got a way for you to sort of tie in if you want to add other stuff to it. So like if you work regularly with an affiliate network that isn't covered in your privacy policy or is requiring something extra, you should be able to plug it into our pop-up, but it requires a little bit of technical work in order to be GDPR compliant. So that's the hard thing is, you know, the rules came out and they're very vague. So everyone's just like,
yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
I imagine it was a huge one for you.
We're continuing, like, we haven't like just decided it's one and done. It's continual research, and we paid our lawyer, I want to say she researched 100 hours. So we were not playing around with it, right?
Yeah.
Because this is 3,500 people's livelihoods that we were like, no, we can't play around with this. And so we made sure that we knew what we were talking about before we started rolling stuff out, which I think frustrated a lot of people because we were slow. But we, you know, with us, we don't ever do anything willy-nilly. It's deliberate. So yeah, that's been a whole interesting thing.
Well, at least it's getting there now. The world didn't end on the 25th of May. So I've got a couple of questions from Ingrid. She says, Mediavine has gotten deservedly popular in the blogging community with many new bloggers added each month. What are the benefits to Mediavine's bloggers for having a larger publisher network, and does that translate into higher ad sales for all bloggers on the network?
Okay, so you faded out there for like half a second.
Oh, no. So what are the benefits to Mediavine's bloggers for having a larger publisher network, and does this translate into higher ad sales for all bloggers?
So yeah, it actually does. This is really one of the cool things, right? Is programmatic advertising. Each advertiser that we work with in a programmatic ad environment has a 2.5 million ad impression minimum per month, right? So we work with 10 different ad partners. So we could grow to be 15 times our size and just be hitting their minimums. So the bigger that you are, the more money you can sort of commandeer from those buyers, because what they're looking for is they're looking to reach a specific demographic. And they don't care if that's on bluebonnetbaker.com or where'ssharon.com. They don't care so long as that person has the demographic. And if they can come to Mediavine and know that they can get it, and and know that that person is highly engaged because our viewability scores are so high, it does mean more ad money across the network for Mediavine publishers.
Cool. She also asked, but I feel like you've already answered it, about whether travel blogging ranks well in as far as being lucrative compared to other niches.
Oh,
but,
yeah. I mean,
yeah, you're just saying it's about the audience, right, and their demographic.
Right. But I mean, one thing I will say is, like, while the niche doesn't necessarily matter, the way that the content sort of evolves matters. So a travel blogger, right? You're out there in the world and you can take 30 pictures on your vacation and you haven't even scratched the surface of your vacation pictures, right? And they were easy to take, other than dragging your DSLR along with you, right? And writing about a location, I think, is a lot easier. Whereas our food bloggers struggle to make long form content.
Yeah.
So travel bloggers tend to make some of the best money in the network simply because they have such long content.
Yeah,
so
cool.
in that aspect, or the food bloggers that make step-by-step photos of every recipe that they make tend to make more money than others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so length is what can help a lot too.
Yeah, for sure.
If anyone else has a question, they better get in quick. There was just one more about repeating that business website with the privacy policy. I think it was Business Ease, like someone wrote. businesses.com.
I'll add the link after, if that's okay. I'll add it on the thread.
That's awesome. So I don't see anything else. So I want to thank you very much, Amber. That was really interesting. It's really cool to